So in your list, write down all the things, the thinking, the mindsets. I know some families do this, right? Like if you make a mistake, instead of helping you to correct yourself, you are being chastised, you are being blamed, you are being called names. Now that is a practice that you don't want to inherit. You want to break that cycle. Because if you inherit that, then you're going to do it to yourself. It's an automatic thing, right? You will do it to yourself. And then you do it to your children and future generations. So you get chastised for making mistakes. Like instead of learning from mistakes or teaching you to learn from the mistakes, you get chastised. That's one example. Another one where I observe a lot is when children go out to play, right? They're on a playground and then they fall down. And instead of comforting the child, sometimes the parents would hit the child for falling down. Which, you think about it, is as an outsider looking, right? You think like, what? What's going on? The child fell, the child hurt himself or herself, and you're hitting the child, like you're causing more pain. But what is actually happening is the parent losing control of the situation, right? They feel like they have lost control of the situation and they're trying to gain control back. And so in order to gain control back, they express anger. And because they're not able to contain the anger, it comes out as violence, right? Physical violence. I consider any hitting of children or caning children violence, is an act of violence. No matter what you want to say about this, I know people like to argue with me and they say, oh, you cannot spare the rod and spoil the child, that sort of thing. But it's an act of violence. To me, there's no two ways about it. Okay, it is an act of violence. So sometimes people say, oh, I was caned a lot as a child and I turned out fine. But when I observe the person, I said, I don't think so. I don't think you turn out fine. You have so much baggage and the shadow energies and all that, and you're not even aware, right? So that's something that you might want to also consider. I mean, if you've been hit a lot as a child, you might want to put down in your list, right? Things that you inherit from your mother and your father. Some of the things that we carry with us would be our parents' pain. Right? As children, maybe we listen to their stories about how they suffered and their pain, and usually they share out of goodwill. They share because they want us to learn, they want us to understand. But if we're too young and we're not able to process the information, we will take it as pain and we carry that pain, and we may not realize that we carry that in our bodies. And when we grow up, these seemingly sad energies or depressive energies or anxious energies that we have no idea where they come from suddenly surfaces, right? It could be energies that we are just simply carrying, from our parents. So we inherit that, all right? And we don't want to pass down these emotions or thought forms or mindsets. I pass it down to our children. Okay. Now, if we don't have children, then we may then go into self-attack, right? Into the consciousness where we go into our in how we communicate with our inner child. Okay, so that can happen. So in your journal, make a list of all the things that you can think of. I mean, there's no rush, there's no deadline. Keep an open journal about this, like every time you spot something, you journal it, you write it down, like, oh, this is one thing that I inherited, from my mother or my father. Now, if your parents have a way of communicating, let's say they treat you with silence, or when they withdraw love, when you misbehave, you need to put it down, because that is something that has impacted you, and you will likely behave this way towards your spouse, towards your children, towards other people. You will give them the cold shoulder, you give them the silent treatment, if this is something that your parents do. And if your parents just observe, like the things they do and the things you do, the way they communicate with you and how you communicate with your spouse, your partner, your loved ones. There is a pattern. There is always a pattern. And when you bring conscious awareness to these patterns, you catch yourself and you break the cycle. That's the first step. Second step is to heal, of course, the woundings, right? You heal. Maybe as you remember, you recognize the pain in your body. You may not have conscious memory, but you recognize the pain in your body when certain emotions come up, like when you watch a movie or when someone says something which has the same vibrational frequency or energy as something that your mother or father said to you in the past, and you feel that pain in that particular part of your body, then that's an energy, right? It's a shadow energy lodged within the physical body, and that's when you need to sit with it. Not to avoid it, not to suppress it, not to repress it, none of that. Sit with it. Sit and allow the energies to be expressed. It's not easy to do this, so I would highly recommend working with a therapist, right? Because it's not easy sitting down and say, okay, I want to feel the pain that I felt when my mother told me the story about her childhood, and I felt her pain then as a child, and I'm feeling the pain now, and I want to just sit with it, right? It's not as easy. In this sort of work, I always recommend doing it with someone who is good at it and who is able to sit in a session with you and to supervise the session. That is far more fruitful than trying to sit and work with it and not get anywhere. And then you end up saying, but it doesn't work. Of course it doesn't work. You don't have the know-how, right? But if you want to try, you want to attempt this on your own, you need to sit with it. And you sit with it for as long as the emotion is still there. Every time you bring up that emotion, it's still there. It means it has not been transmuted. To deal with these kind of emotions, right, is about moving through it, not moving away from it. Our default in the world that we live in, right, in this society that we live in, we want quick fixes. So all we do is we move away from negative emotions. We move away from negative thinking. We move away, when in truth, we have to move through it. And only when we move through them, we gain the enlightenment, right? It's like imagining yourself like a caterpillar in, I use this analogy a lot because it's the simplest analogy. You move through, you're in a cocoon, right, with that negative emotion, and you move through, and then you emerge as the butterfly, right? So it's about moving through our negative emotions, moving through our negative thinking. It's not avoiding them. Avoiding them makes them more powerful. Whatever is in the shadow and you push them further into the shadow, it has so much power to control your every movement, to control all your decisions, and you think that you are the one in charge. No.